One struggles to imagine the contortions of intellect and moral relativism required to render the smoke jaguars anything other than the execrable beasts they so demonstrably are. As a faction, they are not merely cruel, authoritarian, and brutal, qualities, it must be said, that might be grudgingly acknowledged in their competitors, given the ruthless survivalist environment of the inner sphere and beyond. No, the smoke jaguars revel in cruelty for its own sake, their every action bearing the hallmark of an unrepentant, gleeful disdain for anything resembling the higher ideals of civilization. To play as a member of the smoke jaguars in Mechwarrior 5, Clans is not merely an exercise in immersive storytelling or role-playing complexity. It is instead a sordid exercise in the aestheticization of atrocity, a virtual jaunt through the moral equivalent of a scorched earth campaign conducted by the Gestapo or the Khmer Rouge. Lest one think I exaggerate, let us consider the salient details. The Smoke Jaguars, it must be understood, are not merely an aggressive faction, but are known throughout the clans, and indeed the Inner Sphere, for their unparalleled barbarism. When the Inner Sphere is subjected to clan invasion, many clans bring with them a grudging respect for the societies they aim to conquer. The Smoke Jaguars, in contrast, view entire planetary populations not as people to be negotiated with, ruled, or even exploited, but as chaff to be discarded. Their militarized zealotry is matched only by their disdain for the so-called free-birth humans they encounter. Individuals who, by accident of birth, fail to meet the Jaguars' rigid standards for genetic superiority. It is not enough that they annihilate. They annihilate with panache. Their devastation is a form of sadistic art, conducted with an almost Nietzschean will to power, but devoid of even the glimmers of intellectual merit that might redeem such hubris. When the Jaguars invade a planet, it is not merely to subdue and conquer. They aim for eradication of culture, of history, of identity. Entire cities are razed to the ground in a manner reminiscent of Carthage after Rome's Third Punic War, though lacking even the Romans' cold logic of empire. To then centre a game narrative on such a faction, and to ask the player to inhabit one of their warriors, is a task fraught with ethical and artistic peril. Mechwarrior 5. Clans ostensibly seeks to explore the internal dynamics of the Smoke Jaguars, perhaps with a mind to humanize them, or to depict the fractiousness and moral ambiguity that might exist within such a group. Yet one cannot humanize that which actively rejects the tenets of humanity. Any attempt to gussy up this story inevitably falls flat, for the Smoke Jaguars are written too well, or rather too irredeemably. Their very raison d'etre leaves no room for nuance or sympathy. They are dogs, and not in the endearing, loyal sense of the term, but in the most pejorative, nautical fashion. They are curs, fit only for condemnation and disdain. To pretend otherwise is to engage in a kind of historical and moral revisionism that I cannot abide. It is akin to suggesting that we might find it interesting or educational to inhabit the mindset of a Gestapo officer during the liquidation of a ghetto, an exercise that may be momentarily provocative, but is ultimately hollow and grotesque. The Jaguars' atrocities are not merely incidental, they are the very fabric of their existence. To play as one of them is to don the garb of the oppressor and to act out the most unpalatable aspects of power, power devoid of conscience, honor, or restraint. Some will argue, as apologists for such narratives often do, that to inhabit the role of the antagonist is to gain a deeper understanding of evil. This is an argument as ancient as storytelling itself, and it carries a certain merit when applied judiciously. Macbeth is richer for allowing us to sympathize fleetingly with the doomed Thane of Glamis. The works of Dostoevsky and Nabokov, to name but two, demand that we confront the darkest recesses of the human soul. But these works succeed precisely because they compel us to look beyond the mere mechanics of malevolence and into the heart of what makes such characters complex, tragic, or pitiable. The Smoke Jaguars, alas, are not tragic, they are not pitiable. They are a faction without reflection, remorse, or redemption, and thus any narrative constructed around them is condemned to be as empty and lifeless as the worlds they leave in their wake. To play as a Smoke Jaguar, to walk in the boots of a genocidal zealot, is not to grapple with moral complexity. It is to immerse oneself in nihilism, stripped of the philosophical weight that even Nietzsche might demand. It is to embody the banality of evil, though without the unspoken critique that makes that concept bearable. It is, in a word, pointless, And so I must return to my original contention. The smoke jaguars are not a faction worthy of celebration, exploration, or redemption. They are and should remain a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of what happens when power is divorced from morality and ambition from humanity. To present them as anything else is not only artistically shallow but morally insidious, a betrayal of storytelling's higher purpose. Play as the smoke jaguars if you must, but do so with the understanding that you are engaging in an act of narrative masochism, an exercise in the glorification of the ignoble.